What's up Zoomers? In this video, we will create a very nice looking to-do application using Tailwind CSS with the help of Vue3 Composition API, and also to make it persistent, we will use HTML5 local storage. So this video is going to be a bit longer than my previous videos, and if you code along with this video, you will be able to understand the basic concept of how Vue3 Composition API works and how you can use Tailwind CSS and make really nice looking UI. What's up Zoomers? In this video, we're going to make a nice looking to-do application that you can see in front of your screen, where you will get a nice looking UI with the help of Tailwind CSS. We are going to use Vue3 Composition API to make it, and also we're going to use HTML5 local storage to store the to-dos. And you can add a to-do, let's say read a book, and add to-do. So this is going to add a to-do. And you can click on any to-do to mark it as completed. So if I click on it, you can see this is completed. You can also delete a specific to-do just by going over here, and you will find this little icon here. So we are going to click on it and it will remove that specific to-do. So for example, if you want to remove this delete a book, you'll click on it. And obviously it is using the HTML5 local storage. So that means it will be stored in the browser. So if I refresh it, so you will see that it is still there, the to-dos that we have created. So let me just show you once again. If I delete all the to-dos and if I make some, let's say, write a readme, okay, and also let's say drink water. Okay, so we also have this nice little button here, so that is going to mark all of the to-dos as completed. So if I click on it, you can see both of the to-dos are going to mark as completed. So yeah, this is what we are going to build in this specific video. So hopefully you like it, and let's keep going. Alright, so we have the terminal here. So I'm going to let's just create a U2 folder. So I'm going to say YT. I will go inside this folder here, and now I'm going to create a new application. So I will say Vue create, and now I'm going to call it YT to do. Okay. Now it will create a Vue.js application. Now it is going to ask you about which kind of application you want, what are the necessary tools that you need in your Vue3 application. Okay, so you can select the Vue version here. So we are going to go with the manual select feature. Now we just need the choose Vue version and the Babel, and we don't need the formatter. Okay, and we are also not going to use the router just because it is going to be a single page application. Now all you need to do is just hit enter, then select the Vue version. So in this case, we are going to use the Vue3 just because we are using the Vue3 Composition API. Now you can select any one of these. Let's just say in dedicated config files, and I don't want to set it as a preset. Alright, so this is going to install the dependencies. It is going to take up a while, so let's just wait. Alright, so the project has been created for us. Now if I type ls, you will see the name of the directory. Now I'm going to go inside this folder directory. Now if I type l, you will see that it is going to list down all the files and folders that are available. Now since we are using the Tailwind CSS, so I also need to install Tailwind. So in order to add Tailwind CSS to your Vue project, all you need to do is just type Vue add Tailwind. Now it is going to ask for a sort of config file, like which kind of config file you need. So I am going to select the minimal. Okay, so you can see generate the Tailwind config.js. We are going to use the minimal. Now it is going to install the Tailwind dependency and add it to our project. Alright, so as you can see, the Tailwind has been set up for us. Now I'm going to open this specific folder inside the VS Code. Alright, so we have VS Code in front of us. So now I'm going to open up a terminal, and now I'm going to type nrs, or you can, I actually made an alias for it. So alias, you can see npm run serve. So I'm going to type this npm run serve. So this is going to run our website. So it's going to just take up a while. Okay. So now let's take a look at the directory structure. So in the source folder, we have the components directory, and we have this app view, which is the main component, or you can say the root component of our application. So for the sake of simplicity, we are not going to use a lot of components in this folder, so we are just going to stick with the app.vue file, and this is probably going to be the only file we are going to edit. So now first of all, I'm going to create a root div here. So I will provide the ID of app here, so let's just create it. Now I am going to lay down a basic structure corresponds to this to do. Okay, so now I'm going to have another div here. Wait a second. Okay, now over here, now I'm going to have my h1 tag, which is going to represent the heading, so which is going to be main page of to do. Now after this div, we are going to have a form here. So form, now we don't need to specify the action here. Now we are going to use some classes, so I'm just going to add class here. Now inside it, we are again going to have one more div, now which is going to contain a label, so we don't need to specify the for here. And now we're going to say to do name. So this is this label right here. Now we are going to have an input of type text. Now we don't need to specify the name and also not the ID. We just need the class that we will use later. Okay. Now after this, we are going to create another div that is going to store the add to do and this mark all to do as completed button. So inside, so over here we are going to have another div, and inside it we are going to have a button. So this button is going to have a text called add to do. Now we are going to have another button which is going to be contain this icon here. So I'm going to use a site called Hero Icons. So this site will provide you some nice SVG icons. So I'm going to use this icon. So you can see it looks like tick or correct or mark. Just search for it. Okay, so here we have this. So you can directly copy the SVG here, and I'm going to paste the SVG here. Okay, so once this process is done, now we are going to move to the section after the form, which is going to contain these to-dos. So let's start. So after this form over here, we are going to have a root div that is going to contain the to-dos. So let's just provide an ID here just to get the information, although we are not going to use the ID. And also we will be writing some classes here, so I'm just going to provide a placeholder for that. Now we will have another div. Now this div will actually contain our to-dos. So before doing it, now we are going to dive into some of the JavaScript stuff, and now we are going to use the composition API. So first of all, we don't need these components, so I'm going to remove this and this, and also I'm going to remove this. Now the only method that we need to implement in the composition API is the setup. So we will do this. Now inside here, first of all, we need to import two things, and which are going to be a ref to create references, and the another one is going to be the onMounted lifecycle method. So onMounted, and we are going to import it from the Vue. All right. Now inside the setup directory, we are going to contain, we are going to create two references. So using this ref method here, and this is going to initialize by an empty string, and the other one is going to be to-dos, which is going to store all of the to-dos, and which is going to be a empty array. Now we are going to we are going to use the v4 directive to render all of the to-dos. So since we do not have any to-do right now, but we still have this to do reference. Now I'm just going to export it, return it, so that I can actually use it. So now I'm going to use this return method, return an object which is going to contain these two references. So the first one is new to-dos and the other one is going to be to-dos. Alright, so now I can use it here. So first of all, over here in the input, now we are going to bind it, so using vModel, and now I'm going to use that new to-do. It should be new to-do, not to-dos. So we're going to change it here and as well as here. Alright, so once this thing is done, let's go back over here. Now we are going to bind it with the vModel, and let me just refresh it and let's see what are we getting right now. So you can see we do not have much things over here. So I'm going to remove some of the lines from these last 3 lines. And since I'm going to use a different font, which is going to be Anonymous Pro, I am just going to open the index.html file here, which will be in your, obviously, the public directory. So over here I'm going to write some classes. These classes are going to be the Tailwindcss utility classes. So first is min@screen, which means the minimum height needs to be the height of 100 VH, or you can say the height of screen. Then I want to provide the BG gray as 900. So this will be really dark background, so you can see. And then I'm going to provide one more class, which is going to be overflow hidden. So this is basically going to hide any content which is going to come outside this whole body. Okay, so yeah, let's get back to the app.vue file here, and now let's take a look at the form. Now over here we have this input box, which is again binded to the new to do. So now we are going to deal with the form submit event. So we are going to say @submit, and since we want to prevent the default behavior, we will use this .prevent. Now here we will write a function, specify a function which is going to deal with this, and we'll say add new to do. Okay, so now we are going to define this method. So I'm going to copy it, and we will get back here, and over here I am going to define this function. So function, and now I'm going to paste it the name. And now over here what I'm going to do, wait a second, function. So over here I'm just going to console log the new to do dot value, just to see whether it is working fine or not. So if I open up my browser console here, and if I start writing something here, and if I click on this add to do button, which is not visible, I know, but we will make it nice looking in a while. So if I click on it, you can see we are getting an error. It says add new to do is not a function, and the reason is because we need to also return this specific function so that we can access it in our template. So I'm going to add this specific method here as well. So once I refresh it and reload this page, you don't have to reload it, but I did it anyways. So if I just write here something and click on add new to do, you can see it is going to provide you the value. Now each to do is going to be an object. So if I am going to show you which kind of object it will be, so it will contain the ID, then it will contain the text. Okay, so for example, drinking water, and then it will contain a boolean value which is going to represent the completed state. So we will name it as is completed, and we're going to name it, or you can say provide a default value for it as false. Now what I'm going to do is just copy this for a number of times and just going to render it so that we can see how it is going to look like. So now I'm going to change the ID here, so and just make it 2, and also one more time, and let's just make it 3. So over here, right over here where we were dealing with the this to-dos div, over here we're going to write some code to render those to-dos. So over here, first of all, let's just provide it a ID so that we can identify, or you can say basically memorize, okay, this is the div that I've created for a specific to-do. Okay, now what I'm going to use is the v4 directive, and we are going to say to-do in to-dos. So, and then we are going to specify the key, which is going to be to-do.key, sorry, to-do.id, right? Okay, now I'm going to specify the @click directive, and we're going to deal with the click method whenever you're going to click on a div. So it is going to call a method which is going to be to-do completed, and we're going to pass a to-do here. Okay, now inside this div, first of all we are going to have a span which is going to contain first of all we are going to have an h1 tag which is going to contain the text. So I'm going to write the h1, and now I'm going to just render the to-do dot text here. Okay, so we will write more code here, but before this, let's just dive into the designing portion, and let's see how we are going to make it nice looking, right? Okay, so we will start from the ID, we will start from this app div. Now let's start writing some classes. So first of all, I want to specify the width of 3 by 5. So again, these utility classes are from the Tailwind CSS. If you want to know more about the Tailwind CSS, you can go to their website, tailwindcss.com. And if you just type Control-K or click on the search button here, then you can just look for the width and hit enter. So here you will get all the information about the width class that you can write. So over here we are using this width class, which is width-3 by 5, which is the width 60%. All right. So we want 60% width, max auto, which means margin on the x-axis to be auto to make it horizontal center. Then padding 4, bg gray 800. So if I refresh it, so you can see it started to take the shape. Now we want it to be rounded, so rounded MD. Margin 4, relative, overflow hidden. All right. Now we are going to say we are going to add some padding from the top side. So let's just say padding 14 from the top side. Okay, because we are going to add our h1 div there. So then we are going to have some margin also, so that it looks a little bit more nice. So you can see this. All right. Now we're going to Now we're going to add some classes to this div. So first of all, we want to say width full, and this is going to contain the absolute positioning. So that's why we're doing that. And also we want it to have the bg purple 600 background color, top 0, right 0, left 0, text center, then text white, then font semi bold, then text XL, and let's save it. So you can see this is how it is going to look like. Now after adding the font semi bold and text XL, we want some padding on the y-axis, so py2. All right, so now you can see it is now looking a bit better. Now talking about the font, so I don't really like the default font that it provides, so I'm going to use a font from my computer. I mean, If you want to add the same font that I'm using, you can do it, but all you need to do is link also from the Google Fonts. So you can see I'm just going to write a global styling here. So I'm just going to say font family. Although this is not the best practice to do since we're using the Tailwind CSS, but for the sake of simplicity or this video, just let it be. It's not bad actually. Anonymous Pro. Alright, so now you will see that the font is a bit better now. Alright, so now we are going to dive into this form, and let's add some classes to make it a bit better. So we want border bottom 2. So this is going to add some sort of border, you can see. Now we want to specify the border color, so border purple 600 and then py4 to add padding on the y-axis. Alright, now let's talk about the form. Okay, so form is done. Let's dive into this div. Now we are going to use the flex box here, so flex and item center. So item center is basically going to align the two items center on the x-axis. So you can see if this is the axis, these two things are centered. Now let's go to this label here and let's add class is equals to. First of all, we want the white text, then let's increase the font size by text LG, and then we are going to add font semi-bold to increase the font weight. Okay, now we will dive into the input box and let's add some classes to make it a bit better. So first of all, we will add a class flex1, so that is going to say the width of this specific text to be the full width of its parent container. So if I just save this, you will see now it will have the width of the full container. Now we are going to add some padding on the x-axis and some padding on the y-axis. Now we are going to provide the background, so BG grade 300. Now we are going to provide some border, so rounded SM. Then we are going to provide text gray and 800. Okay, when I save it, you can see it started to look better. So you can see this is how it is going to look like. Okay, now let's dive into this div, which is going to contain our button. So we want some margin from the top side, so MT5. Now we're again going to use flex box because we have two buttons and we want to align them in a nice way. So we are going to use flex items center, and also you guessed it, justify between. So justify between will actually going to add space, maximum space between these two elements. So if I just save it, and you will see this. All right, so now now we have the flex box here. Let's start customizing our button. So let's add class. All right, so if we want px4, py2, adding paddings, then decreasing the font size, increasing the font weight, then specifying the text color, then adding the background color, so BG purple 600. Now we are going to add some border radius, so with the help of rounded SM. Now we are going to deal with we are going to remove the focus styling. So if I click on this button, you can see we are getting this dotted outline, right? So I'm going to remove it, so outline none. Now when you are going to hover over it, now if I currently hover over it, it is not going to do anything. So we want to make it a bit better, so we are going to use hover, and then I'm going to specify now I'm going to specify a background color so that when you hover over it, you will get a nice effect. So yes, BG dash purple dash 500, and then let's save it. Now if I hover over it, you can see the outline is gone, and also you can see the button looks a bit interactive. Now we are going to use a property, or you can say a feature that Tailwind provide, which is called ring. So if I go to this ring here, you can see it is some sort of outline outside the buttons. So we are going to add it to our button. So we will say focus ring dash 4, and then the color of the ring, which is going to be purple, and then 600. So if I just do this, you will see that it is going to give us a really dark ring, which is not good. So we are going to decrease the opacity. So we will say we will say ring dash opacity dash 25. So if I save it, now you can see it is better, right? Alright, so after doing this, now we are going to add some transition just because it is too sharp, right? So we are going to say transition, and then let's provide the duration for the transition. So duration 100 milliseconds, then ease and out. Now we are going to, if I just save it, so now you can see it is a bit better. Now I'm going to scale it, the button, when you hover over it. So we will use hover, then scale 105. So in order to make it work, you need to use a utility class called transform. So once it's done, if I hover over it, you can see that the size of the button is also growing. Alright, so we wrote quite a lot of classes in our button. So now we are going to move to the next button, which is this, right? So let's take a look. So we are going to take a look obviously on the classes for now. So the first class that I want is, first of all, I'm going to change the color. So in order to change the SVG color in Tailwind CSS using its utility classes, first of all, we are going to remove this fill thing. Okay, because we are going to specify this fill current using the utility classes. So fill current. So what fill current allow us to do is basically allow us to set the text color to the fill color of the SVG. So if I do text dash purple dash 500, or let's say 600, and if I save it, you can see the text color, the fill color of SVG is now set to the text color. Alright, so now we are going to specify some classes over here as well. So let's say class. Alright, so we will say some padding first of all. So P3 rounded full. So rounded full will make the background in full circle. So if I do, and also we're going to remove the outline obviously. So focus outline none. Now when you hover over it, we want to change the background. So hover BG purple and then dash 600. Now the thing is, if I hover over it, then you can see it is not that much good looking, right? But in order to make it good looking, we are going to decrease the background opacity. So we will say on the hover, we will say BG dash opacity, and then we will say 25. So the opacity when you hover over it will be 25%. Now you can see it looks better, right? So yeah, this portion is done now. Now we are going to work on the to-dos, right? So you can see that we have already started, these to-dos are already started to render, right? So all of these to-dos, all of these 3 to-dos, right, that we wrote in this to-dos, these are being rendered in the virtual DOM. So now we are going to give it a bit more better look, right? So we are done with the button right now. Now let's dive into this class. So first of all, over here I'm going to specify the margin from the y-axis. Now, so I'm y4, and now we are going to dive into this to do. So let's say class is equals to py-4, so to specify padding on the y-axis of 4 units, then px2, and then we are going to say rounded then dash alright, so rounded dash LG. So this is going to specify the border radius, and then we are going to provide the background color. So we are saying BG gray 300, same as the background color of the text box. So you can see this is how it looks like. Now we want to add some spacing between them. So one way is to specify the margin. The other way is to use a nice thing which is called space Y, because we want the space on the y-axis of 4 units. If I save it, so you can see this is better now. Alright, so now we are going to add some more classes over here. So now we are going to say cursor to be pointer. So cursor to be pointer. So when you hover over it, we will get the pointer cursor now, which is better. Now we are going to say transform, and we are going to handle the hover. Again, we are going to scale it the same way we did with the button. So when you hover over it, you will get a scale of 105. Then we are also going to add transition. So transition, and then we are going to add duration 100 and ease in out. Okay. So after doing this, now we are going to also make it flex, just because we want to add a delete button here as well, right? So we are going to say flex, then again items center, right, to center the items horizontally. So items dash center, and then I am going to use the justify between. Okay, so to add the space between the two items. Now we do not have the second item, but we will add it right now. So now we are going to use another SVG icon. So if you take a look at this div over here, we just have the h1 tag right now, but now I'm going to have another span tag. Now this span tag is going to contain the SVG icon. So let's copy the SVG icon. So if I go over here, and now if I take a look at the delete icon, so if I just look at delete, okay, now if you take a look over here, you will find this nice looking icon. So I'm going to use this. So let's just copy it, and now I'm going to obviously format it a bit still. Okay, now we are going to remove the fill current thing. So, and also now we are going to add fill dash current, and also going to specify a text color, but we will do it in a while. So now over here you will see this is how it looks like, right? Okay, so now we are going to add some more classes to it, to the span tag. So let's say class. So first of all, we are going to add a padding of 2 units, and then rounded full to make obviously it a bit circle, and then we're going to use cursor pointer. So cursor dash pointer, and then again I'm going to use flexbox to center this thing. Let me show you what I mean. So if I'm going to hover over it, it is not going to give me anything, but if I set a BG gray dash, let's say 500, to explain you what I'm going to do. Okay, it is actually centered, right? So we do not have to do that. So okay, so now it looks better. And now we are again going to deal with some transform, the hover stage. Wait for a while. So we do not need the hover stage here, sorry for that. So what we need here is, when you hover over it, we want to set the background and also some opacity. Okay, so when you hover over it, we want to set the background. So BG dash purple dash 700, and now we are going to add the BG opacity. So opacity, and now we are going to add the opacity of let me think, let's add opacity of 20. So 20. So when you're going to hover over it, this is how it is looking like. Wait for a while, it also needs to be on the hover. So if I hover over it, now it looks better. One more thing to do is to change the background color of the SVG, right? So we are going to say, okay, so the color doesn't look that great, right? So all right, so when you hover over it, you can see we are having this nice looking background. But when you are going to deal with the select, or you can say the completed to do, at that stage we want to change the background to purple, right? So for that we are going to deal with the to do dot is complete, and we are going to render the classes based on a condition, right? So what I'm going to do over here is to go back to the span class, right? Now over here I will use the colon class directive of Vue. Now we are going to say we want to add this class when the to do dot is completed. Okay, so when the to do is completed, at that stage we want to change the background, so bg purple 600. Then we want to change the white the text color also, so text dash white. So if I'm just going to make one to do as true, okay, and if I save it, you can see it is going to change this, and this is over here. Okay, wait for a while, this needs to go over here in the div tag. So after this we're going to paste it. So if I save it now, you can see this is how it looks like, and it is much better, right? So this is done, but when it comes to this specific thing right over here, we want it to be better, right? So now we are going to deal with this icon. So what I'm going to do, in the span tag of the icon, I'm going to use again the class directive, and we will render the class when we do not have the to do completed, so is completed. First of all, when it comes to this span tag, we have already set up the background, right? So when we hover over it, you will get a background of purple, right? And the opacity of 20. So if I hover over it, you are getting the nice opacity. But at the same time, what we want to do is when the to do is actually not completed, right? So when the to do is not completed, at that stage we want to add the onto the hover stage, we want to add the bg white, okay, and hover bg dash opacity dash 100. So what are we saying here? Like to do dot is completed when the to do is not completed, so these to do are not completed. So you can see this is how it is looking like, and it is not good actually, because we need the text white also. So text white, so you can see this is how it is going to look like, and it is actually better. So let's decrease the opacity and see. Okay, I think this is also better. Yep, this is better. Alright, so this is the to do now. So now what we want to do is now we are going to deal with the classes, right? So when you click over here, and like when you select a specific to do, at that stage we want to the to text to strike out, right? So that will represent that this particular to do is already completed, right? So what we want to do over here is in the div, we want to add one more class which is going to be line through. So line through. Okay, so now if I just save it, you can see the text is now striked. right? So which actually represents that this text is this to do is completed, which is fine. Now the UI looks better, right? So you can see the UI is much better now. You also have a nice looking button and a nice looking text box. So now we are going to deal with the functionality. So the first functionality that we want to deal with is going to be adding to do, right? So when you click on this add to do button, we want to add to do. When you click on this button, so the form will be submitted, and so we do not have to manually deal with the on click button event. So when the form is submitted, it is going to fire this event, which is add new to do. So over here we have add new to do, which is just going to console log the value right now. But what we actually want is to update this specific to dos, right? Or basically you can say add a new to do to dos array. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to check after trimming the input. So what I mean is new to do dot value. So new to do dot value is going to give you the value of the to do that you're going to type over here. Now dot trim method is actually going to remove all the trailing and leading white spaces. And now we are going to check if it is true, right? So we are not going to add a new to do when this whole thing is empty, right? So what we want to do is to do's dot value dot push. So push method is basically used to add a new value to the array. So each array is going to each element of an array is going to be an object, so which contains ID. So ID here is going to be like when you're going to make it in real life or with the help of the backend as well. So at that stage, this data is going to come from the API, so you do not have to deal with the ID manually. But for the sake of simplicity here, I'm just going to use date.now, which is actually going to give you a number which is going to represent the current date time stamp. So if I use date now, you can see it is going to give you this integer. So yeah, now after this we are going to have a text which is going to be new to do dot value, right? Since new to do is binded with this text box, so it will be the value. And we are going to have is completed, which is going to represent whether the to do is completed or not, and by default the value will be false. So now what we are going to do is, if I just save it and if I just click on here and click here, let's say learning view, okay, if I hit enter, you can see it is added, right? So this is working fine, but at the same time it is not clearing the form, right? So after adding it to the to do, I want to clear it. So what we can do is basically say, after this we are going to say new to do dot value is equals to an empty string, okay? So now if I add this to do here, so if I just add hello world, hit enter, now you can see this form is, or you can see this text box is clear now. All right, so this is it. Now when we click on a specific button, right, when we click on a specific to do, we want to mark it as completed, right? So the way we do it is by first of all adding the on click method, or you can say add click directive, so which is already added. So this is going to execute this function which is to do completed, and it is going to take an argument of to do which we are passing here. So now I'm going to create a function, and let's just call it function and paste it. It is going to accept this to do here. So what it is going to do is, first of all we will do to do dot is completed is equals to do dot is completed. So this is going to change the value of the boolean value of the is completed variable, okay? So when I save it, I also need to export it here as well, right, to actually able to use it in the template. So to do completed. So now if I click on a button, I mean a to do, you can see it works fine, right? So this is just perfect. All right, so now the thing is, when we click on this button, right, so we want to delete a specific to do, right? So in order to do it, we are going to actually again do the click directive. We were going to add that event on this button. So over here we have the span button, right? So sorry, the span tag, which contains the SVG icon. So now I'm going to add this @click directive here, @click method, I guess. Okay, so @click, then we're going to pass the method here. So now I'm going to call it delete to do, and again we're going to pass to do. So now what we're going to do is again going to create this function here. So we will say function delete to do, and again it takes to do as an argument. So the way we delete it is by actually iterating over the to-dos and just by removing that specific to-do. So let's just take a look. So we are going to say to-dos dot value is equals to to-dos dot value, and now over here we are going to say dot filter, and now the filter accepts a callback function, so which is going to have one parameter, which is item. This is going to represent the current item of the array. Now what we want to do is basically return item. We want to return a boolean value, so item not equals to do. Okay, so what this will do, this will check whether this is specific to do, right? This is specific to do is equals to the current to do. If it is, then it is not going to return true, otherwise it will return true. So basically this will filter out the list and make it basically delete the specific to do. Now still we need to add it here, so delete to do, so that we can access it. So when I click on delete button now, you can see it is working just fine. Let me just delete all of these buttons, and now if I add hello world, and if I add I am Vivek, now if I select one, it is working. If I delete this, you can see it is working fine. Now the problem is, if I refresh the page, you will see that we are still going to get again the same 3 to-dos that we have defined over here. But since I mentioned, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we are going to use HTML5 local storage. So we are going to first of all remove it. Okay, so this is now going to be an empty array. So now if I refresh it, this will automatically be reloaded. So you can see now we do not have any to-do, right? So in order to use the HTML5 local storage, first of all we are going to use this onMounted method inside the setup. So if you are familiar with the Vue3, if you are getting confused, so this is Composition API. In Composition API you need to import that specific lifecycle method and then add define it inside the setup method. But if you're going to use the normal Vue3, what you need to do is you need to here add one more function which is going to be mounted. So since we are using Composition API, this is the way to do it. So now over here we are going to define the onMounted method. So onMounted. So this onMounted method is going to take a callback methods, so callback function. So which is again, so over here we are going to check if local storage. Now local storage has these 2 functions, get item and set item. So first of all we will try to get the item. So we are going to check whether it contains this specific item, which is man to-dos. Okay, now if it contains that specific item, we want to change our to-dos, right? Or you can say we are going to parse the items from here and then add it to the to-dos reference. So here I'm going to just create a new variable, man to-dos is equals to JSON.parse, because this local storage is going to store your content in the string format, and I will show you how it will work. So we are going to use the get item again. Over here I'm going to specify man to-dos. Okay, so this is simple. Now what we are going to do is say man to-dos dot for each. So for each is a method for array, so we do not want anything. Then element, instead of element we will use to do, and over here we are going to use that to-dos dot value dot push. So we are going to push the value inside the specific to do. So yep. All right, now you might think we are not adding that specific element inside the to do, right? So the way we do it is when it comes to add new item at this stage, after clearing the value, we also want to set the local storage. So local storage dot set item, and we are going to set the man to dos, and we are going to set it to the JSON dot stringify, and here we are going to pass the to dos dot value. So to dos dot value will be a list of objects which will be converted into string, and again set it to the local storage. Then we are again going to parse it here when the component is going to mount, and then it will load all the saved to dos. All right, so this process is done, right? So if I reload it, you can see we have two items. So this is from the past project when I was actually building it for you guys. So if I delete these two to dos here, and if I refresh it, so you will see that we are still getting these two. And the reason is because we are not removing a to do, right, in the delete method, right? So when we are going to delete a specific to do, which is over here, so we also want to remove it. So we are going to use this. And also when you are going to change the state, we also want it. Okay. So yeah, once this process is done, if I refresh it, you can see we will have two to-dos. If I delete it now, let's just delete one. And if I refresh it, now you can see we only have one. So if I delete both of them and if refresh it, now you can see, okay, it is taking up a while. Okay, now we do not have anyone. So if I just create some random to do here, so A, B, C, and D, and hit enter, now you can see we have 4 to dos, right? And if I make 2 mark, so this is the current state of our to do application. And if I refresh it, we should get exact same state. So now you can see this whole storage is now persistent. And obviously we can delete it. So for example, if I want to delete the C, and if I refresh it, we should get the same state. Okay. So when the component is mounting, at that stage we are loading all of the to-dos from the local storage and then rendering it. And when you are actually going to add a new to-do or actually going to remove it or toggle the change or toggle the state, at that stage we are also changing the local storage. Now one more thing to do is to deal with this button. So when you click on this button, we want to mark all of the to-dos as completed. So again, this is easy. Now we are going to create one method that will handle it. So we are going to create that method and we will call it function, and we will call it mark all completed. So mark all completed. So this is again not going to take any argument, and what will it do? It will iterate over the to-dos dot value, which will be a list, and we will use this for each method. And again, this for each accepts a callback function, so to do. And now what we are going to do is say to do dot is completed is equals to true. So iterating over all of the to dos and then changing the state. Now still, if we want to use this function, we want to return it over here, so I'm going to write it here. And now we need to add it to this specific button, right? So we are going to look for that specific button. So if I go over here, you will find the specific button after the new to do, sorry, add to do. So this is the button, right? So we are going to add over here, just add the add click and paste it and just call it. So if I refresh it, so now if I click on this button, you can see all of the to dos are now marked as completed. And if I refresh it, this state should be okay. So this state is again not persistent just because we are not changing it in the mark all completed. Well, you can also watch for that specific variable and do it, but let's leave it for another video. So I'm just going to just going to copy this again, and I'm going to paste it over here, mark all completed. So yep, so if I refresh it, you will see the exact same state. Okay, now if I click on this button, so this is going to mark all of these elements as completed. Now if I refresh it, okay, So now you will see the same state. So let's take a look and let's just add some nice to do that actually makes some sense. So let's say drinking water, learning Vue3 Composition API, okay, and let's say learning Django. All right, so now if I want to, let's say if I've completed learning Django, I can click on it and this will change the state, and if I refresh it, it will still save that specific state, okay. And also I can delete a specific, for example, if I want to delete this drinking water, I can delete it. So you can see it is gone, and obviously it is persistent. If I want to mark all of them to do as read, so like if I want to mark all the to-dos as completed, so I can click on this button and this will mark all the to-dos as completed. So this is how you can create a nice looking to-do application using Tailwindcss, Vue3 Composition API, and HTML5 local storage. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any query, obviously you can leave in the comment, and if you want more coding tutorial like this one or more advanced one, you can obviously message. So yeah, that's it for this video. So we'll meet in the next video. Bye guys.